Now, the Nairobi Securities Exchange has rebounded from a dreadful first half of 2022 as easing rate rise expectations in the United States and scramble for falling stocks fueled a rally in July. Now, market capitalization increased by 259 billion Kenyan shillings in July to 2.19 trillion Kenyan shillings, driven by local investors snapping shares dumped by foreigners. That shifted capital to safe havens abroad. Earlier, we spoke to Erick Mokaya, the founder of Mwango Capital, for more.
I think the major push is once again Safaricom. It's the usual monster in the market. So once it moves, then everything moves with it. So I think from a low of around 23 Kenya shillings back in June, I think it ended the month of July at around 29.50. So I think that increase is what spurred the increase in market cap at the NSE. But also, I think investors have generally been around shopping for the fallen angels. So I think they're scooping up those which have been beaten down by the market. So I think Safaricom has been the main beneficiary of this. But again, elections are next week. So I think people are a bit worried, but at the same time, you can't help but dive into a good opportunity when it presents itself currently.
Yeah, they say you never let a good pandemic go to waste. So we expect the stock to again see some form of effect. But I want us to look back, Eric, at that first half-year performance, right? The year began very, very strongly for the Nairobi Securities Exchange. And then all of a sudden we had a collapse there. What really was the curtain call?
I think that has more to do with global markets. As you saw, the situation in Ukraine and the EU and Europe generally has kind of hit the markets. So investors, and then add on to that the fact that the Fed is also raising rates. So I think a lot of investors were recalibrating their expectations and everything around the investing. So they're liquidating the most liquid of assets, and some of them include Safaricom. So I think that's why there was quite an exit. A lot of investors were heading to the exit, especially the foreign investors. So I think if you look at the statistics from the CMA, it shows that in major foreign investors were actually net sellers in the first half of the year. So there's a lot of course, fear around Kenyan elections. It's a new president who's going to be sworn in. So I think the current one is retiring. So I think that's also one of the causes of some of the issues that the country is having. But also add to that also that the Euro bonds have been performing quite poorly. I think there's a spike at the 2024 one spiked up to until around above 20% in terms of yields, which is very scary for investors. So I think a concoction of factors is what has been driving the market in the first half of the year. So hopefully some of these abate in the second half so that investors can be able to have a smile on their faces maybe as they head towards Christmas this year.
Already looking at Christmas. Eric, I just want us to go back to a stock that you talked about, and this is Safaricom. We are seeing the arrival of a new chairperson, the chairman there, John Ngumi, coming in to replace Michael Joseph as of today. Could this in any way have a change in the strategy of the company?
I think the CEO has had 3 years to cement himself, so I think that's enough time for him to there's been a lot of exits from the company. I think most of those people who are working for the previous CEO, and now I think he has his own people now at the top. So I think he has people that he can trust to be able to help him, to take Safaricom where he wants it to be. He's very keen on going into Ethiopia, so I think that's not going to stop under the new chairman. So I think the new chairman perhaps will give a steady hand in terms of helping him manage and strategize for the future. I think it was curious that the exiting chairperson, who has been there for around 3 years or so, who was also one of the founder CEOs of Safaricom, stated that he felt himself that he's not the best. He doesn't have the kind of skills required to be a chairperson. So perhaps this new person has John Ngumi has the requisite skills to help to steady the ship in terms of being able to help the new CEO to accomplish what he set out to, and perhaps also to help shareholders also realize some of the ambitions that they have for the company. So I think generally it's a good thing that there's a new CEO. We wait and see when he gives us an address to see what he has in mind for the company as a whole. But all in all, I don't think there's much change overall for the company strategy. The company is still going into Ethiopia, still expanding, still implementing 5G, still trying to grow M-Pesa as much as possible to make it more as much of a financial product as possible. So I think those things are not going to stop.
And Erick, the central bank is also coming down hard, and we're seeing it already happening in other markets in regards to the separation of those two, the mobile money side of things and the telco side of things. We're seeing, we've seen it in Rwanda happen with MTN and MTN Momo, Airtel Money as well. Now in Kenya, the lobbying is happening both ends. Do you think finally Safaricom and M-Pesa are going to be split?
My thinking is a matter of a matter of when, not if, on this regard, because I think it's a global trend, as you've seen, like a lot of telcos delinking themselves on the momos and then the money markets, and then you're able like to push more products and more banking oriented. So I think Safaricom is pushing at the edges of becoming a bank. So I think they are almost becoming a bank. I mean, the latest product they launched is a BNPL product, which the CBK didn't like, because now you're moving into almost providing loans yourself as a company. So I think like some of these things, it's really pushing at the margins of towards becoming almost like a bank. So I think it's a matter of time before central bank requires Safaricom more to have like a banking license. And that would, of course, have a major shakeup in terms of how things are doing, or at least Safaricom to spin off M-Pesa, and then M-Pesa can realize its full potential, because under Safaricom, it's valued. There's the what you call the conglomerate discount is applied to M-Pesa. M-Pesa is one of the biggest platforms in Africa, so having around 50 million subscribers. So I think that tells you it's a powerful product. Perhaps it needs to be delinked, but as this exiting chairman said last week, I don't think they have any plans to do that anytime soon, sadly. So I think 5 to 10 years perhaps, but not in the next 5 years.
Erick, yeah, the Safaricom volume today, over 3,000 shares, they have exchanged hands, second biggest move in terms of volume today, just behind KPLC. Now moving on to some other counters, KCB counter there being the biggest move among the banks. We're going into earnings seasons, especially the announcement of results happening very soon for the first half of the year, Q2. What kind of effect should we expect that to have on the likes of KCB, housing finance, and equity shares?
So I think in terms of those banks, something to pay attention to is, of course, some of the banks have some exposure to Eurobond. So I think that's important to see who has been hit, especially because the Eurobonds have not been moving in the proper direction. They've been moving towards yields of plus 20% in some of them. So I think some of the banks will have exposure to that. Something else to maybe pay attention to is in terms of loan loss provisions heading into election season, and whether people are repaying the loans and stuff like that. And of course, to pay attention to the bottom line, the revenues, the net income, and how it's flowing. That's important. So I think later this month, we're going to see how the banks are performing. The good thing in Tanzania, the banks looks very strong. The top 2 banks reported last week, and they look very strong in terms of earnings. One of them hit 10 trillion Tanzanian shillings in terms of asset base. So I think like maybe over to Kenya to continue that good trend, especially for the first half of the year. So hopefully they have good things in store for us at the end of this month, towards the end of this month as we go towards earnings season for banks in Kenya.
And Erick, just before I let you go, one of my favorite counters over the past 2 years has been the Nairobi Business Ventures counter. It is being hit in the red today. NBV down by about 4 index points there to close the day at 3.4 Kenyan shillings a share. NBV, do we expect a rebound anytime soon?
If you ask me my honest opinion, no. I think it's more banking. When you're investing in NBV, it's more or less the Kenyan spark. So I think you're kind of betting that the company will be able to implement some of the plans that they have in store. I'm not so sure. I haven't really checked into that count. I feel it's more of a speculative counter. But I have a good friend who's pro NBV, so I respect his views on that. So I hope he's right in terms of the share will rebound when people realize the true value of the company. But I share the opposite opinion. I don't think it's a worthwhile venture for me.